Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the final tribal council. Just to explain to the audience how it will work tonight is the final three will get to make opening statements. I said no more than 3 minutes. And then we will go, the jury will get to ask questions. We'll start in order from the first person who is on the jury, Matt Rogers, to the last person, which is Cody. Any of the jury is allowed to piggyback off a question or ask a follow-up question, but we will go in this order. One other fun thing about our game that we're going to do a little differently is we have some other people here to join us in the vote tonight, and that will be the 4 Edge of Extinctioners, and they together will get 1 vote amongst them. So they will not get to ask a question, but they will get to add a vote. So Brian, Ezra, Michelle, and LaBelle, if you're here, feel free to turn on your cameras if you want us to see your facial reactions. Hi, guys.
Hi.
So again, they will not be able to ask questions, but they together will have a vote. So I'm just going to do in order of the screen for the opening statements. Myers, you're the first person I see, and then it will go Lindsay and then Brittany, and then for closing statements, we'll go opposite way. So Brittany will begin, Lindsay will go second, and Myers will go last. So Myers, we'll begin with you.
All right, first of all, hello. I spent a lot of time thinking today, and I can break my gameplay into 3 broad categories. I'd like to first start with social bonds. As a bartender, I pay my rent by serving drinks, but I pay for everything else by connecting with people quickly, being attentive, and being nice. My strategy from the beginning was to cultivate this sense of social maneuverability. My social connections afforded me a lot of knowledge throughout the game, and except for Dylan's idol, I knew where every advantage was before it was played. Maddie told me about her block of vote 2 days before she played it against me. Brittany and I, of course, played very closely to each other, but allies would approach me more often than not if they wanted to collaborate with us. For example, when Mary tried to create an alliance with Ashley, Lindsay, and Maddie, 2 of the 3 of those people came to me with that information separately. I connected them, and then we connected with Brittany. Next is information brokering and general strategy. I primarily targeted people who identified as playing a similar game to my own. That's Ashley, Rogers, Ben, Mary, and Adam. I believe my performance at the Coratonga Tribal directly led to Adam being voted out at the immediately Coviasa Tribal. I knew he would be the swing vote between Laura and Dylan, so I preserved 2 potential allies for myself while getting rid of a super fan threat, never having met him before. I maneuvered through the game by collecting information and using it to broker power. I would often sit on information and wait for the moment of optimal impact, such as when I shared news of Cody's advantage to Maddie, convincing her to change her vote to Brittany just before we went to Rocks. This was 5 minutes after Maddie and I had voted for one another at the previous tribal. I used well-timed truths to cover my half-truths. Brittany won an advantage to have a 5-minute chat with a juror of her choice. I mentioned Laura's final 3 words to me on her way out: don't trust Brittany, while I also owned up to entertaining Ben's talk of voting her out. She chose to speak with Laura and only now knows how deeply my talks with Ben went. Finally, adaptability and growth. I played a very, very hard early game. Shortly after the merge, we had the Superlatives Challenge, for which Probst was 10 minutes late, and those 10 minutes of joking around on Zoom completely changed my game. I realized in those 10 minutes that I was playing a game that I did not enjoy, and it became very clear based off of the categories that I won that no one was enjoying my game either. In the Zoom call that followed that, I spoke with Mary and Cody, and I came clean to them about spending all day trying to orchestrate a Mary blindside. I completely gutted my game up until that point in order to recommit myself to that alliance of 6 people. It obviously didn't go as planned, and I hope that Ben and I will have a chance to talk about that more later tonight. But from that moment, I started to play a game that felt truer to myself and kinder to others. My final moment of growth came last night when I continued to hold my ping pong ball for 30 minutes after the call ended. I was determined to earn my spot here, and Cody, if you wanted to see me sweat, you should have pushed me to go for a full hour. There's still a lot unsaid, and I look forward to answering your questions and clarifying any details about my gameplay. Thank you.
Great, and that was just about 3 minutes. Lindsay, we'll move on to you.
Hi, everybody. So as I've mentioned throughout this game, everybody kind of plays differently. I don't have a flashy game like Myers and Britt do, but I was smart with my alliances. I knew when to make a move, and I did well in challenges, and I was good at getting people out without being too forceful. Myers and Britt had a great game, but it was their game together. They moved together, they had advantages and idols together, and used all of them. I didn't have any advantages throughout this game. I didn't have any idols throughout this entire game, and my name was only written down once. Even though I was a threat in challenges and a lot of tribal wins were because of my contribution. With the burpees, we ended up winning that one because I went back in with the burpees. With charades, we ended up winning that one. When it came down to individual challenges, I was second a decent amount. Half of that was strategic. Half of it was that there was always just one person better. But I'm gonna break down mine into the outwit, outplay, outlast. So my outwit is probably one of my strongest of the game. My alliances, my relationships, my ethics. I was voted most honorable, and I wanted to be that. I wanted to be truthful. I wanted people to want to work with me, and I feel like I was able to do that throughout the whole time. I was able to use that to persuade people without seeming too forceful. It was one of my ideas to try and get Mary out when she had 2 wins, and I also knew that she was playing a couple of different alliances as well. I knew that I needed to prove to Brittany and Myers that they could trust me again after Rogers was voted out. And when Brittany and Cody were up for each other, I didn't back down from voting for Cody. I told Brittany I wouldn't vote for her, and I did that, and I almost got voted out in that instance. Kat was unfortunately somebody who got voted out from that, and I think she was wrongfully sent home that night. But because I didn't stand down from my word, Brittany ended up not writing my name down and wrote down Maddie's name later on. My outplay, I was considered a physical threat in the beginning. I was a threat in challenges, and part of the play was to make sure that I didn't win too much. I knew after the first challenge, somebody had said I was a physical threat, so I decided to downplay that a little bit more. I also knew that when Mary won twice in a row, she became a target. I got second in both of those, and I was able to still persuade her to, or still persuade for it to, the eyes to go to her. Being in second is a scary place because you're a physical threat, but you have no protection. But I was able to maneuver around that. My outlast, I was able to adapt throughout the game. I was in a really good spot after the swap. And the moment that we swapped into Pandara, where Matt and I were outnumbered through the other tribe that was pretty strong in their relationship, I knew that Matt and Mary knew each other outside of this, so I thought that I would probably be going home. I was able to sell myself as a good alliance and a good member for challenges. And when Rogers was blindsided, that was the only vote that I was not involved in throughout this entire, or when Rogers was blindsided, that was the only vote I was not involved in. I did not know that that was happening, and I had to be able to regain the trust of Britt and Myers afterwards and continue my alliance with Kat and Mary so that they believed that they could trust me as well. I feel like at the end of the day, like I can look myself in the mirror and be proud of the game that I played. And I know that I don't have as many idols and advantages won, but I don't think that's the most important part of this game.
Thank you, Lindsay. And we'll go to Brittany for the last opening statement.
Okay, so hey guys, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I played a perfect game, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I played a completely honest game, but the game I played is the game that got me to where I am, and ultimately that's something that I'm proud of. So my strategy coming in was to play nice. I can get along with pretty much anybody, so I really wanted to make sure I was trying to come off as less strategic than I wanted to play. So I really kind of tried to downplay in the beginning how much I knew about this game. I tried to come off as a casual fan, but ultimately that's not the case. I'm a huge fan of this game, and I love this game and have so much respect for this game. I've studied this game, and I know the strategy it takes to win, and so I ultimately used that to my advantage to try and get information I needed and be tactful. My social game, I came in with no prior connections that I knew of, and I knew that connections outside of this game were going to be really strong, so I wanted to find the connections, and ultimately I did that, and I used that knowledge either to build trust with people or to create distrust with people. And you always have to be thinking about what's the best thing for someone else so that you can better understand what's best for you. And I feel like I used that to my advantage, and that helped with blindsides against like Ashley, Michelle, Ben, Mary, and Maddie in the end. So if I didn't have advantages, I tried to find out where they were. I was always suspicious of people. You know, I had 2 individual immunity wins. I found 2 hidden immunity idols, and I won an advantage in the final challenge. You know, during the superlatives, I got most on Slack and most intelligent. I didn't really know how to process that at first, but I never quit in this game. I was always ready for the next thing, always alert, and really underestimated just how smart and clever I could be in this game. And that's something I'm really proud of. If I participated in a challenge individually or with the team, if we were down at the puzzle, I always came back and got up and won. And that's something that I didn't expect, so I was really proud. So, you know, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here virtually with all of you to plead my case. Every decision I made got to me to where I am, and I'm ready to own up to those decisions and answer your questions because I'm just really proud of the game I played, and I want to just share with you all just why I did what I did. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. And I just want to clarify to the audience again, they will be voting today. We won't reveal the votes till tomorrow. Also, the jury can ask a question to each of the individuals, to only some of the individuals, to none of the individuals. It's completely their time and their choice to do. And so with that, we'll begin with Matt Rogers. You can go ahead, Matt.
Well, hey, to the 3 of you, congratulations on behalf of, I think I speak for the whole jury when I say that you guys really did an amazing job. And it is a little bittersweet for me to see that it's the 3 of you, because as the 3 of you know, the 4 of us were in an alliance in the very beginning. And so while it's not me up there with you, I still feel like I am a part of it. So congratulations. I think that one thing I want to say before I ask specific questions is that after yesterday, I think that we all really want to see you guys go for it. I think that we really don't want to hear from Myers about how he could understand how we could vote for Brittany, or from Brittany how we could vote for Myers, or either of you why Lindsay deserves it. Throw it all away. We want to hear you guys go for the win. Okay. That being said, my first question is for Lindsay. Lindsay, you were my number 1 on day 1, and we always told each other that we would tell each other whenever anyone was saying our name or saying anything about us. So I want to start this off by saying I think tonight is going to be a little bit of an uphill battle for you, because a lot of people in the jury are already kind of making jokes about voting for you, because I think that they're disrespecting the game that you played. And I think you played an amazing game. And I actually think you're a huge threat for the win tonight once everyone hears everything that's said. I want to ask you specifically, when you were in an alliance with me and we came into the merge and I was eliminated, you had no allies. You really didn't. You had to scramble. I think the only person who voted with us was Mary, who was doing it as like a show. Right. And so I want to really know, because I think it's so impressive, how you managed to go from no allies in the merge with only me on your side to me being eliminated, and you're still here in the final 3 using no idols or advantages. Can you talk a little bit specifically about how you navigated that situation?
Yeah, so I reached out to Myers and Britt after that, because I honestly didn't notice that there was a rift between you guys. And I asked them if they trusted me. It was clear that they didn't, but they kind of were implying that they did. At the same time, I reached out to Kat and Mary, and Kat was very much still wanting to work with me. She was great. Mary, I could tell, was not being completely honest. I honestly didn't know that she was involved in that vote until a couple of votes later. But I was able to then form a relationship with Ben and talk to him a little bit, and then Cody as well, and kind of work my way into that old original tribe and be kind of their number, if you will. And that was what I was beneficial for in that moment. The thing that I want to clarify is, while they were considering me a number, I was picking up information, learning about their alliances, And I was also voting for the people that I wanted to vote for. There was never a point that somebody came to me and was like, hey, you should vote for this person. I would imply who I would like to vote for, and it would work its way into it. And eventually, every single person that I wanted gone was able to go home.
Thanks for that. I think you played an amazing game, and I'm rooting for you. Brittany, to be honest with you, it was very hard to think of a question for you because I think that the game that you played was obviously very objectively good. I guess because it's me asking the question, I'll ask a personal question.
Mhm.
What was it specifically about my game and the way I played, and when was it that you decided you were no longer interested in working with me and the alliance that we had? Great.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually glad you asked that because this is something I did want to address with you. In the very beginning, we're trying to form alliances with people, and I did feel the most connection with you, Myers, and Lindsay. But I always felt that Lindsay was more connected with you or more connected with Myers, and I felt like I was at the bottom of that alliance, which I felt a lot on the bottom of a lot of the groups I was in. And so after the Ashley vote, I had heard that there was some stirrings that you were going to try and go against Myers. And at that point in the game, I had decided that if I had to pick between you or Myers, I was going to try and connect more with Myers because I really felt that you and Lindsay were super tight, and I didn't think I could break that. So then ultimately when we got separated on the tribe swap, that kind of helped solidify that too, where you and Lindsay could work really well, and then me and Myers could work really well. And then, ultimately I would have loved to still continue to play with you, but because of those stirrings, it had made me a little bit anxious. And if I was going to tie myself to someone, I wanted to make sure that person was safe. So going into the merge, I just kind of still felt that threat. And honestly, on Kuaratonga, when I was on there, Myers and I tried to play up that you were the one running the show and trying to get everything there because we wanted to keep the target off of our backs. And so, honestly, like I said, I would have loved to keep working with you, but based on the information I had and the way I felt in this game, I felt like it was too big of a risk. But I feel like we could have done a lot of damage together, and I missed that opportunity, but I enjoyed talking with you when I did. So,
Likewise.
I'm sorry, I did want to say too that I heard that you believed that I had only told you about my idol, and I kind of took that to my advantage because I was very open with you, Myers, and Lindsay, that I was telling all three of you about it. And I don't know if there was just some miscommunication, but as soon as I found out that you thought you were the only one, I told Myers and Lindsay, please don't tell Rogers because this could be better for the three of us. Because again, I felt like I was on the bottom, so I was trying to do what was best to set myself up to not be the first one in our four to go. So
thank you for the clarification. And again, I think you played an incredible game.
Thank you.
Myers, I have to say that while Brittany and yourself, I think, made sort of lateral moves in terms of how you dealt with me in the game, unfortunately, I do feel personally hurt more by you than I do her. Because I think that something that happened was, I don't know if it's the fact that we are similar or the fact that there was a competitiveness between us, but it's my belief that you manipulated aspects of my personality to people to sort of exacerbate me as this like unlikable person. And I remember that day that I got voted out, I knew all day that I was getting voted out. That's why I made up that I had an idol. It was very much not a blindside. Kat and Mary were not as good at lying as I think that they thought they were. But I remember when I was gonna get eliminated and I was watching the votes, I was like, oh, after this we'll all laugh and like it'll be like Rogers is out, whatever, like it'll be great. When I was voted out, the look on everyone's faces was just like very cold, and it was very sort of like, fuck that guy. And I think that you were a big part of that. And I think that like the way that you played this personally with you and I was a little toxic, and I did feel a little victimized by you. So I just want to know if you're willing to own up to that and to explain why you think that was a better way to go about this than to sort of work with the relationship that we had.
This has actually been a source of reflection for me as well. In my post, confession to Mary conversations where I was trying to rebuild trust with her, I was very open and I did some soul searching. And in a discussion with Mary, I came to the realization that it is often, it's the thing we hear a lot. It is the things that we recognize about ourselves in others that drive us to mania or really get our goat. And I felt so stupid that I let myself get so hyper-focused on voting you out. I knew that you were gunning for me. I knew you didn't trust me. You threw my name out at a tribal council as someone that you missed talking to, which was a move that I appreciated and utilized in a different way to get Adam out. But I let it really get under my skin. I had a bit of a Highlander complex. There can only be one gay Matt that does comedy that plays Survivor Quarantine. And I am sorry.
I mean, likewise, I think that it did get a little personal between us. And I actually think that if this game was more Zoom-based and less online Slack-focused, I actually think that we could have been quite a team.
100% agree.
I just want to thank you guys so much. And I hope that, throughout the evening, you guys can have fun answering the questions and that tomorrow we can have a little bit more fun getting to know each other. But big ups. You guys deserve it.
Thank you, Matt Rogers. We will now go next to Laura.
Hi, guys. First of all, congratulations to the three of you for getting this far and also making it through Roger's questioning. Probably a harder thing. I'll start with what I thought was the first jaw drop moment of the season, which was when Brittany and Myers went over to Blue. We're clearly told you're not welcome here, or we're voting you out, and you orchestrated what I feel to be the play of the season to get Whitney out. Who orchestrated that? Who is the leader between Brittany and Myers? Who brought what to the table to figure that out?
May I start?
Mm-hmm.
I want to start with one clarification. And it's that Michelle, Cody, and Ben never once made us feel unwelcome. That is why we tried to continue working with Cody and Ben. And Brittany did tell me that she had an idol before I told her that I had the extra vote advantage. So when she told me that she had this idol, I started doing some Survivor calculus, and I realized that we could come up with a near foolproof plan to survive one tribal together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think how I want to start. So the day of the swap was the day that we exchanged that we had advantages. So when we did get on the same tribe, I was very thankful that both of the advantages were in play with us. I will be honest, and I will say that Myers was the one who said that, if we do this play, both of us will be safe. But through talking it out, I did find a flaw in it. And again, I was trying to play this game with showing limited knowledge, but having a lot of knowledge. And so generally the goal was both of us would be safe. And it was if I played an idol and he played an extra vote, then we would be able to force a tie. And then on the revote, if it was still tied, we'd go to rocks. But the flaw was that if you get votes cast against you, you don't get to vote. So if Myers played the extra vote and he was the one that was voted for, it would be 1 vote to 2 votes. So our plan would not have worked. And so ultimately we were hoping that we would be able to go to force at least rocks, or to show that maybe they would turn against each other, because those 3 were not going to budge. And so we took a gamble and hoped that Ben and Cody would try and flip on Michelle instead of going to rocks for her. And ultimately I was threatened that if someone was going to be coming back into the game, Ben had a really good chance of coming back, and I didn't want us to spend our idol and our advantage and then feel like it was wasted because he came right back in and then would not want to work with us. So sorry you were in the crossfires, Michelle.
And if I could add just one more thing to the end of that, when it became clear that the person who cast the extra vote had to be the person that had immunity, I never once asked Brittany to play her idol for me. I offered up my vote. That was a big risk that I took. We had only worked together once, and it was on a generally kind of easy Coviasa tribal council. That was a big risk that I took, and I think that that display of trust carried Brittany and I through to where we are today.
Yes. So Brittany, we had a very deep relationship that no one was aware of, I think. You knew that you were my number one. Mm-hmm. Was I ever your number one, or was Myers always your number one?
So Myers became my number one after the swap. Leading up, I didn't feel like I was really anyone's number one, and I knew that based on conversations, people weren't really talking to you a lot and hadn't really made a firm connection with you. So I was like, I like Laura, I want to connect with her. And so you were, and I told you when I had an idol, and then I told you when I had my second idol, and I won a reward on my first immunity that I got to talk to a jury member, and not everybody knows this, but I did reach out to Laura, and I just took the opportunity to sincerely apologize on her vote out, because I felt like it was because of me she went home, and I felt really bad about that. But I wanted to play with you, Laura, as much as I could, and in that hectic tribal, I kind of felt a fear that the biggest benefit to us working together was that no one knew we were together, and you were already a target, and I was slowly becoming one, and I felt that if I had made the decision to save you, yes, you would have continued to play this game, but I think it would have really alienated us and would not have benefited us in the long run. And that was the hardest decision I made in this game.
Yes, and I appreciate you slacking me as with your reward. I was hoping it was you, or that you would pick me, and I'm glad that you did. What was I gonna say? Oh, so exactly what you just said. You were becoming a threat. Mm-hmm. Do you know that I blocked a blindside of you the day before?
On the Rogers vote?
Mm-hmm. Dylan, Ben, all of the red was coming after you. They needed my vote. And I said, well,
I want to clarify that Dylan threw it out there as, I don't even remember, as a maybe. I never entertained it seriously enough for it to be an actual plan. So I just want to set the record straight on that. I will agree with Myers and Brittany that they had poisoned us, in our opinion, toward Rogers, and did that very effectively. And while I had considered maybe keeping Rogers because people had a certain opinion toward him, it just felt like it was such a mountain to climb to change that. So I don't think, from my perspective at least, and other people could jump in, that there was actually momentum that time, at least on the Brittany blindside. So I just want to set my record straight on
that. Okay. Lindsay, I'm sorry, I don't have a question for you, because your question is exactly the question that Rogers asked, which was, kudos. I can't believe you had one ally, you lost him, and then you made it this far. I was just going to ask you exactly how you navigated it, because it was incredibly impressive. And that's, sorry, I don't have a, you already answered the question I had for you very well. So
I also wanted to note on what your question was to Britt and Myers, the first question on their use of their advantages and their idols was very smart. It was a really good play. Again, it was their play together, not individually. When Myers and I, or when Matt and I first got merged onto the new tribe, we didn't have any advantages for us against 3 of the original tribe. So we had to think of a way to get us to survive through it without any advantages, without any idols. And we also lost the first day. We got into a new tribe and we lost instantly. So we had to form new bonds and figure out a way for us to stay intact without any other idols, advantages, anything. So I do think that it is impressive what they pulled off, but I also wonder if they would be able to do it without any advantages.
Thank you.
Okay, Laura, thank you. Next, we'll move on to Ben. Ben, the floor is yours.
I also want to echo my congratulations to the three of you. Everyone on the jury would have liked to be sitting in your seat, and it was not easy, no matter if anyone thinks any of your paths were. So kudos to all of you and all the different paths you took to get there. Respect for each of your games. I have a slightly different question for each one of you. And Myers, I would like to start with you. And I'm glad you preempted it in your opening statement when you went and changed, in your opinion, the way you approached the game. And you mentioned it a few different times, both at tribal councils, at challenges, and behind the scenes, that you wanted to slow down and have fun. For me, I'm having, and listen, it is Survivor. You play however you play. I have no bitter feelings. You are allowed to lie. You are allowed to manipulate people. And we as the jury are allowed to vote however we would like to vote. And when you said you were going to slow down and have fun and come true to Mary, the versions of that story I heard from everybody were different. I found out that the story you told to Mary about your interaction with me wasn't 100% truthful. The story you told to me about the interaction you had with Mary and Cody also wasn't 100% truthful. So it rings a little bit hollow to say that at that moment you were making an immediate pivot. So I'm curious, I want to hammer down on that. How much was that you trying to regain some level of respect with yourself and actually play honest? And how much was that you actually using a moment of emotional rawness and honesty for really convincing, emotionally manipulative gameplay?
It was a true emotional break. My confessionals from that night, I shot a lot of them and only sent a few. I felt like I had completely scrapped my game in the first minute of that call with Cody and Mary when I was looking at them in the face. To nod to what Roger said, if this game was played over Zoom primarily, it would have been completely different. And this is a moment where that really rang true. I was looking in Mary's face, knowing that I had been trying to orchestrate a blindside for her, and she had just given me immunity. And we had just played this great game of superlatives and had 10 minutes of recess time. I knew I couldn't do it anymore one way or the other. So I was either going to get voted out in a couple tribals because of this bad move, or I was going to play in a different way. I told them that I had approached you with this idea and that we were in talks with Dylan as well, as I know that you had been working with him at that point, or at least flirting with the idea. I don't know if it was genuine, but you do like to weigh your options.
I was listening to Dylan as I was listening to you, so that I understand what you're saying.
So that is information that I shared in the call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you aware then at that moment of truth after the break that you misrepresented our conversation to Mary, and then that you misrepresented your conversation with Mary to me? And was that because you, even in the moment of the break, were still playing the game? I just want to understand what you were doing.
I don't think I misrepresented to Mary. I said that I approached you and Dylan with this. I did misrepresent it to you in the aftermath.
Okay, thank you. You're muted, Matt. You're muted.
Just to bounce off what Ben is saying really quick, I think, Myers, what a lot of us are thinking about when it comes to you is you play the game that you play, and it is like pretty cutthroat. And then you say, never mind, I want to play a clean game. And then you do another thing, and then you flip it back. So I think that you are very much the quintessential bartender in that you say what you need to say to get people to do what you want to do. And so I think that's like an inconsistency a little bit in your argument, is like that you had this like sort of opening eyes moment over time, I think that that's coming across to a few of us as a little bit like virtue signaling. Like it's a little bit like, actually, never mind, I'm going to play like a hero when this is Survivor, and it's okay that you play like a villain. You know what I mean? That's okay.
Could I speak for a moment about, Ben, your vote?
Sure.
My goal from that was absolutely 100% to protect the 6. That is what I wanted after the call with Mary and Cody. It was only because Brittany and I saw Mary delete that comment about Brittany receiving votes. It was only because we saw that and no one mentioned it again that we knew something was fishy and we were on the bottom. So I had a choice at that moment to make. Do I protect the 6 that I gutted my game for, knowing that I'm on the bottom, and it might be a 5 soon that I'm on the bottom of, or do I latch all of my wagon to Brittany's star and like go all in with Brittany? And that is what I chose to do. I also knew that you had more connections than you were saying with Maddie, with Dylan, with you were closer with Cody and Mary, and potentially closer with Kat than I was. So if I was going to have any chance of being with that 5, it couldn't have been with you after Brittany learned about your play to potentially get her out if Dylan played an idol.
And for the record, everything you did in that scramble, I respect both of your games in that moment. Both did an amazing job creating chaos. And when we tried to come back together and make something happen, so kudos on that. Brittany, I want to follow up a little bit on what Myers said and get your perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know how aware you were of this perception that maybe Myers was playing a devious, villainous game. And if you were aware, whether you sort of used that to your advantage, knowing you could very much make similar powerful moves, but maybe you were the one that everyone liked.
Yeah, so I never really perceived Myers to be a villain until I guess more since over the last week or so, because something that I did not agree with was when he did come clean to Mary. And I told him, like, I don't hold anything against him for doing that because I know where he was at in his headspace at that time. But I ultimately felt like that really hurt both of our games. And based upon information I had gathered from him about Maddie's block vote and just his connection with you, I just knew that he was talking to people more than I had thought he was. And so I just tried to make sure that I got the information I needed from him. And then I would go reach out to those people and see like if they would be more forthcoming with that with me too. And I mean, I don't think I really tried to exploit the fact that Myers might not have been as liked to the jury as I was, but I know Myers and I played together, but we played very different. And I feel like when he wanted to play a more passive game, I wanted to kind of up it up and get a lot more aggressive because I never quit in this game. And I never wanted to feel like I had to just sit and do nothing. But sometimes sitting and doing nothing comes to your benefit. But then there was the day of the scramble where I was probably about to go home. And that's when I realized, like, no, I need to make sure that I'm doing what's best for me.
Totally respect that.
Mhm.
Lindsay, I have a slightly different question for you. I didn't quite get to know you as well in this game as I did Brittany and Myers. I just didn't play with you as long, but I enjoyed all the conversations we had. One thing that I found interesting over the past few tribal councils was you sort of kept repeating this idea that you wanted to sit at the end with the people whose games you respected. That was something you mentioned a bunch. And I'm curious, I have a multi-part question. So I'll start with part one. Part one is, do you respect Brittany and Myers' game? And if so, why? Because your game was so different.
I think too, like I followed up with saying that I respect everybody's game because it's a little bit different. Does that mean that I would play that game? No. I do respect elements of Brittany and Myers' game. I think that they were very smart in figuring out numbers. They were very smart in figuring out how to use their advantages to the best way possible. I don't necessarily like the lying and the manipulating. I think that there's a way to play this game that's not about manipulating. And the thing that I was able to do is whenever I felt like there was manipulation happening, I was aware of it, so I wasn't fully manipulated in that instance. I do respect both of their games. I think that it's great that they're here, and from the beginning, they're two people that I had wanted to be at the end with, along with Rogers. Like, we had an original alliance. I was really worried for them when we first swapped and they were on the bottom. I was really afraid one of them would be going home. But there are elements of it that I wouldn't have done myself.
Okay, a follow-up to that about the respect the game, because Kelsey mentioned it a few times, but there's always the question of, do you want to go to the end with people you think you can beat, or this idea of people whose games you respected? And Matt did put it right up there at the beginning that, you know, you might be facing a little bit of an uphill battle. So I am really curious whether it crossed your mind over the past week or so that Brittany and Myers have won a lot of challenges, have found a lot of advantages in idols, have done huge plays like the one they did against me, Cody, and Michelle, obviously, things that are flashy and things that do stand out to a jury. And if you ever said, you know what, maybe I shouldn't go to the end with them, and how you processed those feelings and made the decisions you made.
Yeah, 100%. And those feelings definitely were in my head the entire game, the entire time. But the last couple of votes, Maddie, Cody, and I were working together, and Myers was great with his idol, and that's why he was still here, and Maddie ended up going home. But it was also because I was true to Brittany a couple of votes prior, where I didn't write her name down, and I almost went home because of that she wrote Maddie's name instead of mine. So it's because of that alliance and that friendship that we had formed that I am still here. But that was our exact conversation with Maddie and Cody. Maddie is somebody that, along with me, has been seen as an underdog this entire time. And I think that everybody plays differently, but I think her game was just as strong. I think that because our game was more similar, it'd be easier to kind of compare and have a winner from that. I think Cody, if he had beat Myers yesterday, I think that he would be just as hard to beat as Myers and Brittany are now. But that's why I think it really depends on what you value out of a person's game. If I had advantages, if I was able to get those, maybe I would have had a different, more flashy resume. But I think that the underdog and the plays that I did be able to do, I think that those have their own resume in itself, and it's different than Brittany and Myers' games, and that's why it feels like an uphill battle, is because my resume is very different than theirs, but theirs are very similar to each other, and it's just a different game.
Thank you, all three of you. Again, congratulations. Respect all the games you've played. You guys did a heck of a job. So you should all be, whatever happens tonight, you should all be proud and hold your heads high for the game you played.
Thank you, Ben, for that. And now I will give it over to Dylan Probst.
Dylan Probst. First off, congrats to you all. I've been in your seat, and I know it's not easy. It's not fun, especially since this is probably going to go like 2 hours or something like that. So I would like to just cover three aspects of the game: the outlast, the outplay, and the outwit. Outlast, this one's straightforward. You three have obviously outlasted all of us. Outplay, I would characterize Brittany as the person who wins this category due to her team and individual challenge wins and advantage wins. So then the final category, outwit. And I think this is the most exciting, and, you know, yes, lying and manipulation maybe is a part of it, but I think, you know, it is part of building your resume, and that's a big part of Survivor. And so I just wanted to walk through how I perceive the game to unfold for all of us, and what I consider what I'm calling a Survivor series of unfortunate events. So Rogers, the first person voted out after the merge. There was a clear majority that wanted to vote for him, despite Matt kind of being at the bottom and having little sway in the game, and he knew it was coming. So yes, I made an effort to blindside Brittany, but alas, we could not rally the votes, and so people were adamant about voting Rogers off. An unfortunate event. Next, Laura. Again, another person who was clearly in the minority and an easy target. Most people wanted to vote Laura out. When Brittany didn't play her idol for Laura, I probably should have played my idol for her because I voted for Cody, and so Cody would have been voted out. Another unfortunate event. Ben, we all know how this one turned out. Mary played her idol at the last second, thereby protecting Cody and sending Ben home. An unfortunate event. Next vote was me. I was clearly in the bottom. I also knew that I was on the chopping block and likely to go home and not in a position of power. Knew my time was up. Again, a rather easy, straightforward vote. Instead of working with me, people worked against me. An unfortunate event. Following that tribal immediately was the Rocks tribal, where, you know, a tie and then another tie. And so Kat pulled a White Rock, sending her home with an idol and an extra vote advantage. An unfortunate event. Next was Mary, and Cody left Mary all alone at tribal, clearly making her a target. But in my opinion, that again, a missed opportunity to work with someone who was clearly at the bottom. And instead of any big move being made, Mary was voted out. Another unfortunate event. So that left us with Cody, Maddie, Ashley, Lindsay, Myers, and Brittany. And while I think very highly of Maddie, Ashley, Lindsay, and Cody, and you all lasted longer than I did, I would not characterize you guys as super survivor strategic thinkers, which brings us to the next tribal, where Ashley was voted out. Many of us on the jury were hoping to finally see a big move get made and thought Ashley, Lindsay, Cody, and Maddie would team up, but we were left unsatisfied and Ashley went home. So then the final 5 tribal, Brittany has immunity, Myers has an idol, Maddie goes home. And then the final challenge, we see Cody win. He gets to decide the final 2 that are safe. What does he do? He chooses to save Brittany and Lindsay and put himself in the challenge against Myers, where he ends up quitting, making the penultimate tribal probably the most unfortunate of all events. So in conclusion, my opinion is that there was very little outwitting done in this game and overall poor strategy, which I think is a reflection on all of us, and shame on all of us for not, I think, making bigger moves and going with straightforward votes. So I feel like it's only fitting to end this with one more final unfortunate event. Unfortunate for 2 of you. So I have a single die here. 1 and 2 is for Lindsay, 3 and 4 is for Myers, and 5 and 6 is for Brittany. And so I'm just gonna roll it, and whatever it is my vote.
You're gonna make us pick a number.
It's a 4, so my vote will be for Myers. And I'm done.
Thank you, Dylan. I thought you were going to do Devil Wears Prada wearing those pearls, but I still am very impressed by that speech. Next, I will give the floor to Kat. Kat, take it away.
Hello, everyone. So happy to be here on the jury. Loving this so much. This is just a blast. Having a great time. Congratulations to the 3 of you. I truly don't have anything else to say about that. I thought it was interesting, Myers, during your speech that you mentioned literally everyone except me after telling me I was your number 1. I think that could be construed as like you playing the game really well and maybe misleading me into thinking that I was a more prioritized player to you, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts about that. I also wanted to say that Britt and Lindsay played a game that was very different, but in certain ways their social game was very similar. You were both very guarded players. You both expressed to me through talking or not talking to me that I was definitely on the bottom with you. And Lindsay, that was when you were talking to me about chocolate coconut water, but telling Mary you wanted to go to Final 3 with her. Brittany, for you, I could just tell in the way that you conversed with me. And I think that you conversed with a lot of people that way in a way that was very guarded until the tribal in which Cody was saved by Mary's idol. And I feel like we had a really, really nice moment after that. And I feel like we really, for the first time, decided to work together, even though we had been working together up until that point. I appreciated Lindsay and Brittany's game because I knew where I was with them. I knew where I stood with them the entirety of playing with them. Myers, not so much. I feel like you said one thing and did another, and that's also tough because I know you in real life and I know you as a person. So I want to say that to me, voting for Lindsay would not be a joke. I think it's actually something to consider, and I would like to hear a little bit more from Myers about your strategy and how you decided to play with me. I'd like to start there and then see if I have anything I'd like to ask Brittany or Lindsay.
Absolutely. I did not know that you were going to be playing this game until the Instagram cast rollout. And I was so excited to see you. I assumed we would be on different tribes, and I hoped that we would make the merge. The very first message I sent post-merge was to say hello, and then immediately I started typing that it has become clear to me in my talks with Michelle that you did not tell your tribe that we know each other. I did. This is a warning. I want to work with you 100%. Let's scatter, have our conversations. Let's reconnect later. I know you're good for it. And we did that. I knew the day was going to come when I would have to choose between you or Brittany. You were both playing incredible games. To borrow a phrase from Dylan, in an extremely unfortunate event, you went to rock because of rocks. I did my best to prevent rocks from happening because I felt like we were working together so well, and I knew that you and Brittany had recently started working together really well as well. So I started to have hope of a final three that was us. That is why I decided to tell Maddie, this is our chance to get Cody. He's got this advantage. He's going to be a slippery fish. And Maddie told me she changed her vote, and I suspect that she did, or I have been operating under that assumption. I also think that you...
I did switch my vote, but someone else switched theirs too, and I didn't know that, so.
And my assumption is that that was Kat.
Correct.
It broke my heart a couple days, or maybe a day later, when an immunity idol clue came up, because I figured that you changed your vote because you were holding on to that idol and you didn't want to be rocked out with an idol, which of course happened. So I told you everything that I knew about this game, even things that I promised Brittany I wouldn't share. I kept your confidences though. I did not tell Brittany about your extra vote advantage.
Until after she was gone.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, are you done? Is that all?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I didn't want to cut you off. Okay, so then, Lindsay, I would like to hear a little bit more from you because I really appreciated your opening speech, and I'm curious if you could give us a little bit more detail about how you thought you were playing Mary and me, because we were kind of coming at you from two different angles where I was the one who didn't flip on you and she was the one who did. So to us, it feels like I was good cop, she was bad cop who needed to like get forgiveness. And then you and I continued to work together with you under the assumption that Mary and I were not as close. So I'd like to hear a little bit more from you about how you felt that you outwitted us or outplayed us in that respect.
Well, I was never under the impression you guys weren't close. I honestly thought you guys were still very close to each other. I definitely think that it's tricky because I found out about Mary not necessarily being truthful to me, but I didn't necessarily know if you were in on it or not. I knew that Mary was close with Cody. I had been talking to Cody a little bit, but I had not been that close with him. But you were somebody that you and I continued to make plans together with. Like we would be transparent with each other, and I used my relationship with you and being super transparent with you with all of my voting to help gain your trust with me and you wanting to work with me. I feel like I was very transparent with you when I was voting for Cody and not Brittany. And I let you know even too then that I wasn't going to change my vote. and I hated to see you go, especially that way. I did feel the good cop, bad cop, but I didn't necessarily feel bad cop from Mary because of the things that she was saying to me or what she was doing. I felt it from hearing things from other alliances that I had formed and getting more information on what her actual alliances were. And I know that she might not have necessarily been that close with you because of that, but I never got that impression from what you guys have told me.
Great, thank you so much. Brittany, I'm not quite sure what I have to ask you. I respect your game a lot. I think that you played a pretty guarded social game, as I said, but I think the entirety of this game, you've been working your ass off, strategically planning more than anyone else. And I really respect that. I don't have a question for you. I really like all three of you so much, and I'm really proud of you, and I think that you're all doing really well during this interrogation. And I just wanted to say congrats again, and I look forward to casting my vote for who I think should be survivor.
Thank you. Can I say something to you, Kat?
I would love that.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I just kind of want to explain to you a little bit more why you did think I was more guarded towards you. And ultimately you play this game with the information that you know, and I try and played with fact and not feeling to an extent, but I always had to trust my gut. And because I knew that you and Myers had a connection outside this game, it was a little bit threatening to me. When we did have our conversations, more towards the end, I was very genuine with you, and I did feel like you did want to work with me. And but I feared that you and Myers would be the ones that were the top two and I would be on the bottom. And so I was really guarded. And I knew that Ben and Cody at that time didn't have any advantages. And I knew just based on process of elimination that you or Mary had an idol and an extra vote. And so I was really threatened by that. I don't feel like you had to tell me that for me to trust you, but it definitely played a lot into my logic and the conversations I had, because ultimately I wanted to know the information, but I didn't want everyone to know that I knew that. So that's why I was a little bit more guarded. And then I did, that day of the split vote, I had been thinking that, if I didn't want Myers to feel more connected to someone than he did with me. And so I started to feel a little bit threatened by you, but because you were being so truthful with me, I wanted to trust you, but I knew down the line that it was going to be you or me, and I wanted it to not be me. So, I did feel really bad that you went home that night, but ultimately it did work in my favor because you were a really threatening person in this game, and I don't know if people were aware of it as much, and I really respected the game you played to that point. So
thank you so much for saying that. And also I just want to clarify that I only didn't tell people about knowing Myers because I wanted to be open to working with every person.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to come into this game having a target on my back because of knowing any one person or people assuming that I would just work with that person. I actually came into the game wanting to work with Maddie the most because she's friends with my girlfriend, no offense, Matt, and then wanting to work with Mary and Rogers because I knew that they both would be huge threats because of how social they are and how funny and charismatic they are. But Mary ended up being my number one, and I do appreciate you saying all that stuff about my game. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Can I ask a follow-up to Kat's question? Just one-word answers. Brittany, how many people did you know from outside of the game coming into the game?
Coming into the game?
Yeah.
0.
Lindsay, how many people did you know from outside of the game coming into the game?
0.
Myers, how many people did you know?
1.
Okay.
But Brittany, don't you know Carter?
Yes, but Carter is not playing this season, and I did not know that Cody lived with Carter until after the game had started. So coming into the game, I genuinely did not know a single person. The only way I knew about the game was because of Carter.
Okay.
Yeah, my question was basically, did you know Cody? But you said no.
No, I did not at all. Mm-hmm. That was pure happenstance and kind of was tricky to navigate.
So him giving you the idol on the first day probably had nothing to do with him knowing who you were from outside the game? Maybe that's more of a question for Cody.
And at this time, we're doing no questions for Cody. So I'm going to, but we can address that tomorrow. I think that's a great question, Matt.
I said it. That's all I need to do.
Okay, next we're going to go to Mary. Mary, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Congratulations. Final 3. It's so exciting. Yes, very jelly belly of you guys. It's so incredible and admirable that you got here and what it takes to get here. It takes such a strong stomach. It takes a thick skin, and it takes thinking so much farther in advance than I think I really comprehended going into this. But all 3 of you, it sounds like, really had your finger on the pulse of everything that was happening. You were aware of all the moving pieces and you acted accordingly. So I did have some questions for you. Lindsay, I think your argument of moving through this game, you were so adaptive and having no advantages or idols, you were masterful in how you maneuvered. And I think that's such a feather in your cap that you did all of that without any external help from an advantage or an idol. I will say though, this game, it's a game that values strategic moves and strategic decisions. And it sounds like you had a lot of strategy going on. And I wanted to know, what was the move you made that you felt was the most strategic for your own game? A move that originated with you that you felt was the most strategic for yourself?
I think one of the things that really helped me in this game is gaining back the trust of Myers and Britt. And I think that I proved that to them when we voted out Ben. I didn't necessarily want to vote out Ben. I was starting to get to know him. I was starting to work with him, but I knew that the numbers were going towards Cody. I did not know that you had the idol and that it was going to be used for him, but I used that opportunity to gain back their trust. And I know that Myers was really worried right before that vote. That was a really quick game time decision vote. It wasn't the plan going into it, at least to my knowledge. But I know that Myers was very worried that his name was going to be tossed off. And I wanted to do whatever it took to gain back their trust. And I think from that moment on is when I started to gain their alliance back while working with you and Kat at the same time, which I think helped my game a lot.
Right. And just a follow-up question, because we had talked about a few times going to the end together, and I totally understand that you had questions about my honesty with you. I get it. But I guess a follow-up question for you is, why do you see it as better to sit at the end with Myers and Brittany than with me or with someone else, with Kat or whoever?
Yeah, no, I don't think that it's better to sit with them versus one of you guys. I think everybody played a really admirable game. Like, your game was insanely great. Like, I never truly knew when you were lying to me or not. Ugh, but I kept kept up my guard from after Rogers was voted out with you. Right. I let down my guard more with Kat after that because I felt like she was being transparent with me and I could be transparent with her.
Right.
I definitely don't think that there's any advantage or disadvantage per se sitting next to Myers or Brittany versus somebody else. I do think that sitting next to somebody who played a more similar game to me makes it easier to tell who played a better game because you have more things to compare.
Right.
Since I didn't have idols, I didn't have advantages, I didn't have big game plays that were out in the open like that. I had more under the radar moves. I had to rely on my alliances. I never had an advantage to save me from anything. My name was only written down once. It's a different comparison. It's harder to compare, and I think that's why some people might have been joking about me being here. I'm not dumb. I know that I'm more of like a Michelle type of situation than like a Boston Rob, but I think that there's valid reasons to everybody's game, and Survivor is about all three things: outwit, outplay, outlast, not just about advantages. And I think that that's something that it's hard to remember in this game because it is so much flashier being able to pull out an idol and save somebody.
Yeah, it's not a joke to me at all that you're here. And it's not a joke to me at all to vote for you. I think that you have articulated your game so beautifully. And I totally agree with you. I think that the game that we all know and love has adapted and evolved to this thing where it is so much about big moves, you know, using idols correctly, using advantages correctly. And all of that is great and requires such mental gymnastics. But your game and what you brought to it is as valid as those other gameplays. So kudos to you. Congratulations. Here we are. Okay. So Brittany and Myers, hi. I mean, everything fell apart when I sent that goddamn message.
I'm always on Slack, so I saw it.
I tell you what.
I told Mary, I said, Mary, don't delete it. It's going to seem really fishy. But she already deleted it. And at that point, I knew we were done.
I know. I shot myself in the foot. Look, you were both so kind and gracious to me even after that. That was maybe the biggest trip up in this entire season. And you know what? Proud owner of that. But thank you guys both for being so lovely and gracious to me after that, and still letting me believe that you did want to work together and did still want to come together, even though we had been at odds multiple times. But I do perceive you both, and you say that you were such a close alliance and a lot of moves you made together. So I have the same question for both of you. And I'll start with Brittany. Brittany, what do you think were Myers's strengths that he brought to your alliance, and how did you use them to benefit you? And then Myers, I'll ask you that same question.
Okay. So I definitely feel like I played up in our alliance Myers' knowledge of the game, and I tried to use that to my advantage, even though I also had a heavy knowledge of how the game was played. But I knew that Myers was connected to Kat, so I knew that if we got to a merge, that there would be a possibility that we could work with Kat, and Kat was heavily connected with people as well. Mm-hmm. So I feel like my social game, I tried to find out, I found out who was connected. I knew he was connected to people. I knew people were talking to him, and then he would tell it to me. And like I said, I'd try and see if I could test the waters with that person to see if they were going to be honest with me about things. But yeah, I feel like those are the strengths I took from him. And he also was really smart, and he got some advantages that I was right after him I would have had. So that was extremely frustrating, but I was glad that I knew where the advantage was, because that's the second best thing. So
yeah. Okay, great.
I would echo a lot of what Brittany just said. There were some that I was 1 second behind Brittany. I'll have what she's having comes to mind. We time-stamped same time. Brittany got in there just before. I would say early in the Koviasa days, after one of our first Zoom challenges, Brittany's text tone went off, and it was the Kim Possible. And the next day, we solidified our alliance. I called her Kim Possible. She called me Ron Stoppable. Is this a reference that's lost on anyone? They're spies. They're teenagers. Kim Possible is very smart and able and good in the moment and has great hair. Ron Stoppable has a naked mole rat as a pet and is very emotional and needs to be talked down off of ledges. I played a very emotional game. Brittany, I think, absolutely played more off of facts rather than feelings.
Got it. Okay, great. I think the thing that, and you guys are doing a great job of it, but just to hammer home, you are so closely tied together in a lot of our minds. So I do think differentiating your individual games from how the two of you worked as a partnership, which was so well. I think that's what I want to hear is like, how did you use him for your own benefit? And yeah, you answer that, but just something to keep in mind as we move forward. Congratulations, you guys. Great. What a month.
Can I piggyback on what you said, Mary, though? Because I think this might help figure out what the relationship actually is between the two of you. And then also this goes back to Mary, what you asked Lindsay. I want to go Brittany, Myers, Lindsay. if you had won the final challenge, who would you have taken to the final three? And why in one sentence? Brittany, Myers, and Lindsay. And I know I'm pointing at my screen and it's different from everyone. I'm sorry for that.
If it was between the 4 people it was?
Correct.
I thought about this a lot because I feel like, and I did kind of pitch this too, that if Lindsay was in the challenge, if she had won, I felt like that would have really amped her game up. So I was worried to have her in, but I felt like at that point in the game, Myers and Cody were similar threats against me in the finals because Myers and I have played very similar, but I feel like towards the end, mine kind of accelerated and he kind of backed up a little bit. So I do feel like that was a difference in us, but Cody never really wronged anybody that I knew of. So I probably ultimately would have taken Lindsay to the end with me and made the boys battle it out.
Myers.
I entered that final challenge knowing that I was going to make fire almost certainly. If I had won, I was going to challenge Brittany.
You're going to challenge Brittany in the final tribal to differentiate your game from hers?
Yes.
Okay, cool. And Lindsay?
I think what Cody did was the smartest thing because both Brittany and Myers have such a big resume that if they beat each other to get to the end, I think that would be the cherry on top for their resume. I think, like, I was even thinking of asking Cody to make sure that I do the challenge because what Brittany said, like, I think I needed that shiny little medal to make it feel complete and make it feel more whole. I might have gone up against Brittany because I feel like that's somebody that maybe in a physical endurance challenge I would be able to beat. And so I might have had done the same move but had Myers and Cody get to the end and then try and beat out Brittany.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Ben, for your 3rd or 4th follow-up question. Next person will be Ashley. Ashley, go ahead.
Hi, guys. So congrats. None of us really grew a relationship ever, in my opinion, outside of just general check-ins, like how was your day, how's your sister, etc. Myers, we almost did. Lindsay, I actually told Mary I thought we did, but that didn't work out in my favor. So in coming back, I really tried with you guys. Once Dylan was out, I felt like it was kind of a clean slate because there was an attachment there. I even told Myers and Brittany that I voted for Dylan to try and serve something because I didn't have any information. But you guys kept info from me, and that's fine. That was your right. Like, as Kat said, you were really guarded players, but seeing you 3 as people I didn't really feel any sort of connection with, not overly stoked. I kind of feel like all 3 of you are in a sense kind of the same to me in terms of relationships. So I guess until the Mary vote, when I too was a little blindsided, I didn't really feel like there was any impetus to not working with me. I was clawing for an alliance. So I guess it can be really brief because clearly I don't think you guys really needed me because you're here now. But I guess what was something for kind of not wanting to work with me, bring me on, try and use me, not use me, but you know what I mean.
I can go first.
Okay, yeah, you go.
After you were first voted out, in the beginning, I did want to work with you, but then I noticed that you and Dylan were making a lot of moves that felt very aggressive for my personal style of gaming. So that is why I wanted you out the first time around. When you came back, I do think that we formed more of a relationship. I was trying to get to know you a little bit, and I was enjoying it. I was a little wary because of how you played the first time around, and I didn't know if you were going to flip or want to switch. But it was when Mary was trying to form the female alliance and you were on that with me, I told her I was a little wary of that, but I would be open to that and I would want to do that. And then right after that, I heard that you were throwing out my name to potentially vote me out. And from that moment on, I knew that I couldn't trust what you said to me. You would maybe flip again. And that is why I know, back to Dylan's point, that you guys the jury wanted a bigger move, but to me it was a big move getting you out because I couldn't rely on you as a number because we were set with who we wanted to vote for, and I don't know why you threw my name out again, but it ended up happening and it got back to me, and I just wanted to make sure that people that I could work with in the future I could believe in or trust. But also you killed it getting back into the game, so I give you a lot of credit and props for that. That was insane, holding the book that long. So I did want to work with you when you came back in.
I'll go.
Okay.
So I will say in the beginning, kind of similar to kind of what Lindsay was saying, that I had a feeling that you and Dylan and Maddie were working really closely together, and I had a feeling that you were the connection between Maddie and Dylan, and so I was trying to target groups of threes because that's a pretty big advantage in this game, is having a pretty solid grouping, and so I was threatened by that. Rogers wanted to try and get Dylan out, but Lindsay and I were very adamant that we wanted to get you out because I believed you were the bridge. And so when you came back into the game, I was a little hesitant because I know that I kind of played a big role in you going home, and I assumed you would be wanting to work with Dylan again, and Dylan was constantly like throwing my name out there, and I was really threatened by him. And I know I told this to Maddie. I'm not 100% confident if I told you this, but I didn't really ever feel like I could trust you or Maddie in this game because of Dylan. And was that fair to you? Probably not. But in this game, you take any small thing and you run with it, and that's what I decided to make decisions on. I didn't ever want to feel like I alienated you or never wanted to work with you. I always tried to make it seem like I was open, even though I was guarded. And even on the day when you were going home, I didn't feel like it would benefit to try and see if there was a way we could work together, because at that point I knew where the majority was going, and I just was open with you and was just like, I would have loved to work with you, but I was threatened, and the decisions I made were just that, and I didn't want to just fake you out. So I wanted you to know I was voting for you. So
I'll break my answer into early game, mid game, and late game. Early game, like I said earlier, I saw you playing a game that I perceived to be similar to my own. You were talking to everybody, kind of working both sides, and I saw the numbers going towards you for that reason, and I said, okay, not me, sounds good. Mid-game, when you returned after holding that book up for an hour and 4 minutes, I perceived that you might not be thrilled with me because I was part of the reason that you went home. So I sent you that message welcoming you back, and I answered truthfully any questions that you had about my reasoning behind that vote. And then I kind of left the ball in your court if you wanted to reach out, and I never really received much until the late game. In the late game, when this Women's Alliance minus Brittany started forming, 2 of those members reached out to me to let me know what was going on. You did not, and Mary did not. So at that point, it seemed like things were a little set. I was also afraid of someone returning into the game again at the final 5, making it a final 6. So I wanted to make sure that, Brittany and I were locked together because we were both very large threats at that point. So I didn't want to shake up the game at that moment.
Oh, thank you guys. That's all I had.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ashley. And next we're going to move on to Maddie.
Hi guys, congratulations. Ashley actually asked very similar questions that I had written down, but I'll ask from my perspective, and sorry if things feel repetitive in any way, but I'll start with Lindsay. I approached you with the game plan to align with Cody and use my block a vote when we were down to 5. And I take responsibility for being one of those unfortunate events and not making that move the night before. But did you think to make that move the night before? Because just because I had that block a vote doesn't mean that, it all fell on me to necessarily decide to do that. So how come you didn't think of it and try and work with Cody and me and Ashley to get Myers or Brittany out?
I had thought of it after Ashley was gone, because it was really important for my game personally to get her out because she was the constant person to throw my name out there. When you had reached out to me after Ashley was gone, I was wanting to reach out to you too. I wanted to proceed with caution with it because we had reached out to each other a little bit in the beginning, and like it was like, yeah, like let's stay close, yeah, but it never felt like genuine. I didn't know where you actually stood with me, and so I didn't want to be the one to throw out Myers and Brittany's names to you because at that point I was closer with them than I was with you and Cody, and so I was trying to dangle to you like if that was something you wanted by just saying like, yeah, like I think maybe it's time that we do something. And you're like, would you want to make a big move? So I wouldn't necessarily say that it was just your idea in it. You were the one to approach me about it, but it was because I was being cautious about saying something like that, because if you had gone back to them, because you, me, Myers, and Brittany worked together for a couple of votes, and I was afraid of how close you were with them, and I didn't want it to get back to them that I would be interested in voting them out. And that was the first time I had broke my ethics of this game, and I wrote down Myers' name. And that was the only time that I went against myself with that. But I knew that it was the smartest move for my game at that point, and that's the point, in my opinion, when you have to start looking out for yourself as opposed to your entire alliance.
I think that's fair.
Can I ask a follow-up to that, Maddie?
Yeah.
Thank you. Lindsay, someone referenced before, I think it was Dylan, the jury was waiting for you to make a big move. You had the numbers against Brittany and Myers multiple times. Did you at any point consider making a move? If so, what was it, and why didn't you do it?
I definitely considered making a move. I think it was difficult because I didn't have as many close alliances with other people. Like I had certain relationships with Kat that I think that us personally maybe could have gone farther if she didn't have the unfortunate luck with The Rock. I think that there was people throughout that I wanted to work with Ben, but I knew that I needed to stay true to Britt and Myers in that moment because I could have tried to switch, but there was never a great moment to completely do that until it was me, Cody, and Maddie. And we could have done it with Ashley, but I personally didn't trust her enough to vote with me in that moment, that it didn't seem like a good gameplay to me to try and switch then. I also, my main play after a certain point in the game was to continue to stay true to being most honorable. And when I tried to get their respect back, I didn't want to do anything to mess that up because that's a huge part of my game. And the only point that I ever did that was when it was down to the end and it was the only opportunity to. But I also don't think it's bad to be sitting next to them in the end either.
Okay, thank you.
So my next question is for Brittany, and you sort of answered this a little bit with Ashley, but I kept feeling throughout the game, even from the very, very beginning, that whenever we were having great conversation about anything other than the game, you know, we got along really well, and I really enjoyed talking to you. We bonded over being in similar time zones and being the early risers and all of that. But whenever we tried to talk about the game, I kept feeling like I was giving something and then you were putting up a wall and not giving me anything at all to work with, which I have to say is kind of the reason why throughout the game I considered voting for you and I wrote your name down a few times. You said to Ashley that it was because of Dylan, but after Dylan left, what was the reason for that? And was that your tactic with me the whole time from the beginning? And I just kind of want to hear about why you never really reciprocated the game talk.
Yeah, definitely. So like I did mention, I didn't feel like I could trust you because of Dylan, and I was always threatened by that. And I did try to keep my cards really close. So I wanted to make sure the information I was telling people was to people that I felt like I fully trusted. And I never really felt like I fully trusted you to an extent. And after Dylan left, the next threat with you was Ben. Well, I had always been threatened by your relationship with Ben because you were very forthcoming about it with me, but Ben was not. And so I knew that you were really open about your connection, but Ben was kind of playing it down a lot. And so I never felt like we could get on the same page, but then we did have a couple votes where we did kind of vote together, and I felt that we were at a point in the game where it was beneficial for me to start working with you. But the moment where that kind of broke was after I found out that Myers approached me and said that you had a block a vote and that you were going to tell me about it, and then you never told me about it. And so I was like, okay, well, if I was in her position, I would use that to my advantage. And so the day of your vote, I was the only one besides Myers who knew that he had an idol. And, you know, it benefited my game to keep that very lock and key, because at that point I didn't know if I was going to have immunity, and I didn't want to risk going home. So after I won immunity, I knew that Myers wasn't going to go anywhere because he had to play his idols the last night. And I figured you would block his vote because I had extensive conversations with Cody about trying to get Myers out. So at that point, I knew that I was going to make the sole vote, and that's a decision that I made myself. I did kind of tell Myers, like, I feel like it might need to be Maddie, because I still felt that what was best for my game was to keep Cody in versus you, because you and Lindsay played a very similar game, but I feel like you had a lot more connections with people than she did. And I had a conversation earlier with Myers about if we had to pick between Lindsay and Maddie, who would it be? And he was kind of leaning more towards you, and I was leaning more towards Lindsay. And so I wanted to make sure that I made the decision of who between the two of you were here. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I have to give you credit for something you just mentioned, that I was forthcoming about my relationship with Ben, and I think that what it was is way in the beginning, we were all trying to fish for who had relationships in the game on one side or the other, and I mentioned that I knew Ben's wife, and I don't think I even really clarified that I was real friends with Ben. I was trying to like hide it in some capacity, and you remembered that from like weeks before, and I was like, she remembers everything that people tell her.
You told me that you were friends with Emily, but someone else told me that you said that your husband was friends with Ben.
Okay, so yeah,
I
don't remember saying one thing or the other to different people, but you have a very good memory, and I have to give you credit for that.
You're not the only one that happened to, but yes, there was a couple times I caught other people, and I was like,
Yeah, it's listen, you try and be discreet about these real life relationships, but it's hard because you find out, you don't want to blatantly lie and pretend you literally don't know these people at all. I mean, I told Ben, if anyone looked at my Instagram, they'd see 6 pictures of him right off the bat. So I was just hoping that maybe they wouldn't recognize him with short hair and that I would slide through, but you can't really hide these things. No. But anyway, okay, my last question for Myers. I'll say it again. It's no surprise that I should have made that block on you sooner, and I definitely probably shouldn't have told you about it. But either way, I had to announce before the vote that I was going to block someone's vote, and I probably would have blocked you or Brittany's vote. So you would have known beforehand anyway. So it really doesn't make that big of a difference, but I should have used it sooner, instead of kind of thinking foolishly that you and I were actually playing together. And I kind of felt like an idiot for thinking that you were close with me in the game and that you wanted to make amends later on, even though we had voted for each other throughout. But kind of, I want to know what was going through your mind when we were down to 6 and I had given you that information. And did you sort of perceive me as just a weak player to just drag along? Or did you think that I was going to make that move when I didn't?
No, Brittany said it herself that I wanted you in the final 3 over Lindsay. And that is true. I only told Brittany about your block vote. I waited a day and a half or so. I only told her after I learned that Cody knew about my disadvantage. So I knew that information had been leaked because Cody went to Brittany and Brittany went to me. And I said, okay, I think I know where this came from. Here's something that Maddie hasn't told you. So that is another example of when I sat on information to use at a more strategic time. I absolutely wanted to work with you. I wanted to make amends. And when we worked together on that vote, minutes after voting for each other, the message that you sent me as Kelsey was reading the votes really was, I think, one of the most human moments I've had in this game. And I want to thank you for it. And I truly wanted to make amends.
Okay. Thank you.
All good, Maddie?
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, we will have our final jury member, Cody. Please go ahead.
Oh, he muted.
I've got a different question for each of you. Thank you, Maddie. Myers, I'll start with you actually. So I've written out my questions for each of you. So we were rivals and allies, mostly rivals.
Mhm.
So what you said about the Highlander mindset, yeah, you told me that you and Rogers were similar and that you wanted to get rid of him and be the only funny gay Matt. And so I asked you about your name, and you told me that you didn't like to be called Myers, but you preferred to be called Maddie, but there was another Maddie in the game.
There's only one Maddie in Survival.
I took that as a moment of camaraderie, and I started calling you Maddie from there on out in all of our communication.
Yes.
However, from then on, you say that you took me to the Zoom call and you became honest and you changed your game, but you did not. To the tune of making a habit that you sent me messages about your moves against me just after you made them, revealing the flat out lies that you had told me. Now, that made me realize that you were 100 times better at this game than I even knew about how it worked. But it tells me that your honesty moment did not feel sincere to me. And so you said that tonight. I just think you deserve to be here because you've played this better than I even knew how this game worked. But I'm just wondering how you justify that to everyone else.
How I justify that honesty moment, or?
Yeah. My experience with you was you're saying that you were honest, but from there on out, after that Zoom call, I did not get that.
Sure. I think I made that, well, I had that breakdown, and then I had a day and 2 days, 48 hours of immunity because we were off for the Winners at War finale. And I knew I had to lie low, kind of go with the flow, and vote wherever someone told me to vote for that. Truly, everything changed when Mary and Ben's message got put up and then deleted, and I went into survival mode. That moment, the 2 days after that, 100%, I was down to preserve the 6 that we had. But then the 6 clearly wasn't going to work.
Okay, cool, thank you. Britt, so you told me as soon as we talked that you felt like you wanted to work with me from the beginning. We worked together from New Q all the way through, at least to an extent. And we had a lot of personal communication outside of that with some of our similarities in our backgrounds. When I first started to realize that Kat and then Mary were being less than honest with me, I'd like to know, what did you know that you kept from me that could have helped us both navigate the game together if you had shared it?
In general, or about Kat and Mary specifically?
In general.
Okay, so I feel like I was in between I was in the middle of 2 different things. I was working really closely with Myers, and I was working pretty closely with you. My only hesitations with you at some times was that I knew that there was that vote where I was probably going to go home, and then we had to flip everything. And I was just basing a lot of my thinking about what I had heard from other people. I could have been more direct and just asked you directly, and you were pretty adamant that you wouldn't write my name down, that you weren't going to. I don't know how much of that was true, but at this point it doesn't really change a lot about how we are here now. I do know that there was the vote where Mary saved you, and I did try and take advantage of that situation and try and explain to you that Mary and Kat were not wanting to work with you as much as you had been before, and I still felt like you really wanted to hold on to them. And ultimately, if we could have face-to-face conversations, I probably could have been a little bit more persuasive, but there's only so much you can do on Slack. We did have a lot of conversations about getting Myers out, and I could have told you about his idol at the end, but at that point, what was best for my game was to make sure that no one else knew about it, because I didn't have security in the game at that point because I did not have immunity. So I really, off the top of my head, I really don't feel like there was anything else I really kept against you that would have benefited us more. I did lie to you when we were on new queue because I couldn't let anybody know Myers and I had advantages. And that was really tricky for me because I was worried that after that vote, we wouldn't be able to work together. But I'm glad we did get to still. And I feel like you and I really bonded and Myers and Ben bonded because of that. So, I mean, I hope that answers your question. I feel like I did what I could. I don't know if I could have done more.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Lindsay, my question for you was how I think your game could be viewed would be a middle of the road sort of safe game other than challenges. However, I think that you found the right people and the right alliances, and it's amazing to me that you got a single vote in the whole game. I agree with Kat and Mary that I think we played pretty similarly and that you deserve to be here because I was very much not on the side of correct information the whole game until it was too late. And I want to ask you because you had nothing but positive things to say about everyone that I asked you about. Rogers and Ben and Britt and Mary and Kat, except for Ashley. So I would like to ask you, like, actually, I want to stress that your gameplay without advantages, I think, was great. And how you navigated in the right moments is, to me, pure outwit magic from the little that I know about what's actually going on here. And I've learned a lot in the last few days. So my question for you is, do you think you would have played the same kind of game that it seemed like you would have played had you had advantages?
That's a good question. I think I would, because I've been watching Survivor for like the last 5 years, and every single time I feel like I relate to the players on the tribes that go in this angle. Like they have alliances in the beginning and they try and stay true to them. I think I talked about too to a couple of people that, like, in the last season, Winners at War, when Sarah and Ben and Tony were all crying about having to vote each other out. Like, that's the kind of game I wanted to play. And like when there are people that got voted out that I didn't want to see go, like it hurt. And I felt like the first time that we had to swap teams, I was devastated about it because I felt like we had a 4 strong and we were in a good spot and we really wanted to keep going. And that's why I was also devastated when Rogers was blindsided, because A, I was also blindsided, but B, to me, it was a wake-up call that not everybody wants to play the same game that I want to play. But from that moment, I knew that I wanted to keep playing that game. And there were a couple of times that I didn't want to win the advantages during tribal during challenges because I didn't want to be a threat. I know that after the first team challenge, it was being thrown out that I was a physical threat. And so I just didn't want that target on me. After a couple of not winning, I wanted to win some, A, for the resume, and B, for my own competitive nature. But I wasn't fortunate enough to do that. But I think that even if I had idols, I think I probably would have tried to play the way that Mary did with saving you. I think that was a really admirable way, and I think that showed a good alliance, whether it was real or not. Like, I think that is something that I would have wanted to do if I had an idol or an advantage. But I think I would have still tried to play the same way that I did with having the outwit as one of my strongest things.
I want to piggyback off that. I just want to ask, how many advantages and idol clues did you go after? Just because last season we had someone who made the same argument, but they literally went after none of them. So I'm just curious, like, how many you went after.
For the riddles in the Slack, I honestly was not on for a lot of them. I went after probably 2 or 3 of them wholeheartedly because they were on when I was on there. But for me, it was more the advantages during challenges that I wanted. I wanted that immunity. It wasn't necessarily for the idol. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, and a lot of my strengths and weaknesses in this, I was trying to work on my weaknesses. Like, I know I'm a shy person, so the social game is hard for me, especially over Slack and Zoom. It's harder for people to get to know me. I think that's where some people were saying the guardedness is there when they were talking to me. Riddles are not my strong suit, so I do wish that some of the hidden immunity were something other than riddles or word scrambles. But I knew that my strengths were in the challenges, and that's why I really wanted to win those. So I went after those hard.
Could I ask a follow-up to that as well?
Go ahead, Laura.
So Lindsay, you've said, and rightfully so, you made it a very long way with no immunity and no advantages. But how many other people's advantages did you know about before they were played?
I knew about a good decent amount of them. I think the ones that stand out to me that I was not aware of was Mary's idol and then Myers' idol at the end. And I know that those are two crucial ones. I knew that Myers had an advantage, but he didn't share with me that it was an idol. He said that it was, I think I forget what you said, but I knew it wasn't an idol. And I think it was an advantage or disadvantage to somebody's game and that you were going to try and use it for Cody. But I think everybody, for the most part, felt like they could trust me with it. And that was what I wanted. I wanted people to feel like they could trust me with any of that information if they wanted to, because then it would help me along in this process. And it did help me get this far, because when people tell you that information, they don't necessarily want you out right away.
Thanks.
Are there any other follow-up questions before I go to closing statements? No? Okay. Final three, I'm going to ask that you please be brief. It is 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so please keep it short and concise, and you all gave us a lot of information. So now we're going to work our way backwards. Brittany, we'll begin with you. Go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to kind of highlight the fact of one of the benefits I feel like of playing a guarded game is that I never felt safe in any alliance I was in until the end, and that kind of helped me be on guard all the time. And if you're safe, you get blindsided. And so I never wanted to feel like I had security in this game because I was always working. If I knew that we were going to have riddles, I started looking up riddles. I practiced puzzles every day. If I was on Slack, I was practicing something else. I was trying to get information. I loved playing every minute of this game, even though it was so stressful. I felt like the odds were against me 90% of the time. And when my back was against the wall, I did what I had to do. I knew I was in benefit of like going home. And so I tried to get people to vote out Ben because Ben was a threat to my game and no one else really had seen that at that point. You know, I never gave up, even though I felt like I was at the end of my game and I had nowhere else to go because I was such a target. I just kept pressing on and trying to find positive things in every bad outcome. All of the things that happened in this game that were unfortunate events, I tried to find a way to use it to the best of my abilities to benefit me, to get me to where I am right now. And even though I might have made decisions that might not have looked like they were the right ones, they're the decisions that got me to where I am. Because in the moment I trusted my gut, and ultimately the only person you can trust in this game is yourself. I feel like I played along with people, but I feel like I did play a game that was my own game. And I don't have any regrets, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity, and I have loved playing with all of you, and I can't wait till I can finally let you follow me on social media, and we can just be friends. I don't really know what else to say, and I don't know how much time is left.
Great, that's perfect. That's good. Let's move on to Lindsay. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to thank you guys for all of your questions. I feel like it helped bring a lot to light, and I really enjoyed. This is the longest that I feel like we've all gotten to talk to each other. So even though it was definitely terrifying, it was been a lot of fun in the same. I've loved playing this game. I think that it's been difficult for me because like I said, I'm a shy person. So being able to like bond with people and communicate with people, I feel like I've had good moments with just about everybody here, and I've really enjoyed all of it. I feel like I've proven a lot more to myself than I even thought I could. I know that I wanted to play a certain way, and I'm happy that I was able to stick to that, whether it's seen as not as impressive as other people. That's up to you guys. I know that I outplay, outlasted as hard as I could, and there is a lot of strategy in not being flashy, and there's a lot of strategy and honestly being genuine in trying to get to know people and getting to know them for themselves too. It frustrates me when people say that like they never felt confident in any alliance, because that was my main goal, is to make alliances that people felt comfortable in. And I think that the last time I felt like people were actually comfortable was before the first swap. And I know that that's when the game gets real, but I just really enjoyed this whole thing and getting to know everybody and showing what I had.
I'm muted. Thank you, Lindsay. And lastly, we'll go to Myers.
I want to echo what everyone has said about what a honor and joy this has been, an absolute agonizing road through hell. I thank you all for being part of it, and to Kelsey and the producers as well. I am thinking of the phrase from an old theater professor of mine, which was, hold on tightly, let go lightly. And that is how I tried to carry myself through social interactions with all of you. I knew I was not going to be a challenge beast. I knew I wasn't a puzzle whiz. I knew that all of my gameplay would happen on Slack. Every interaction and thing was honest. I shared a lot about my life and things that are going on and just real life stresses with some of you. And we shared a lot of laughs that at least I was genuinely LMAO-ing. Yeah, you get it.
Sorry.
But I also knew that in order for my game to progress, I had to cannibalize those. I understand I hurt some feelings, and you are entitled to vote exactly how you would like to vote. And that is the game. I would also point out that halfway through the game, I was voted most strategic, the person who thinks he is running the game, and I was tied for most likely to lie. And you all let me get to the end. I received votes at the last 3 tribals, and Cody challenged me to hold a ball up above my head, and I held it for 30 minutes after that call ended. I deserve to be here, and I hope I get your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Myers. Okay, this is like regular tribal. When I call your name, you'll Slack me directly with who you'd like to vote for. The only difference is the name you are sending me is who you would like to win this game. So please make sure when you send it to me, you're not thinking you're voting someone out. You're voting for who you want to win this game. We'll begin with Ashley. Ashley, please Slack me your vote. Okay, next, Matt Rogers. Okay, next will be Maddie. Okay, next will be Dylan. We'll see if your dice is the truth. Next is Laura. Next is Ben. Next is Mary. Next is Cody. Next is Kat. For all main jury, I got you all, right? There's no one that I missed? Okay, so Edge of Extinctioners, I'm gonna check your Slack.
We're not ready yet.
We're almost done, guys, I promise.
Kelsey,
Yes.
I know this is very serious. Are we now allowed to reach out to each other?
Yes, but not yet, because I need the Edge people to vote first, and then I will open the floodgates.
I just want to make sure. Okay.
Kelsey.
Huh?
I sent it to you.
Okay, I am checking. Checking.
Do you have your jet ski ready to go?
No, my production budget doesn't afford that. Okay, so I have all the votes. Tomorrow we will reveal the final votes and reunion. We have lots of fun questions, some videos to show. We'll chat about lots of things. Before we end, first I want to give a round of applause to the final three. Congratulations for making it here. You all did a great job. And then secondly, I just want to thank, and fans, I'll ask you to turn on your videos. I just want to thank all you contestants also for being here. Not all of you knew me or knew what this game would be, and you gave me a month of your life. And our producers, oh my God, Dad, what is that hat? And we're so appreciative to you contestants for, you know, going on this journey with us. I know some of you have learned some things, grown, and I love you all, and I'm so appreciative to you. And fans, we all thank you for watching, and the fans thank the contestants for doing a great job. So everybody
Thank you, Probst. Thank you so much, Probst.
Of course. I will see you guys all tomorrow. See you guys tomorrow. Love you all. Bye.
We should do